Welcome to the introductory introductory lesson for Unit 7 on cognition. So we just finished up talking about Unit 6, learning. So cognition really builds off of that, and it's how we use what we've learned and get it to become memory, basically. How we get the whole process of getting the wheels turning in your head so that something goes from something that you're learning and then sticking in memory and becomes actual learning. You actually learned it. Why? Because it is in your memory forever. This is the unit that I think it is perfect, the timing that we're getting to it in right before exams hit, because I really hope that you'll take something very useful away from this unit, that you'll not only be able to help you in preparing for your exams now, but also at the end of the year or for the AP exams, not just in my class, but in any other class you take in high school and beyond. This unit, pay careful attention because these strategies are going to be things that I think you can really take with you no matter what you do in your future. And I think it's a great unit. It makes a lot of sense, and hopefully for, pay careful attention to the way some teachers do things in some of your classes for this unit, because we will be discussing that, because there is a method to the madness. For example, you may not understand why I do the IDs, and you may not like those and things like that, but I guarantee you there is a method to the madness. There is a point. I swear. There's a reason that they're a thing. All right. So, textbook definition of memory is it's the power of retaining and recalling past experiences. So any organism that has the ability to encode, store, and retrieve information, that whole process of encoding, storing, and retrieving information is what you call memory. Okay? So I'll get into that process in a minute. But the first thing I want to touch on is something called the information processing. And again, if at any time you feel I'm moving too fast, you can pause the video, you can go back, whatever. Just make sure that you are getting some good notes along the way that you'll be able to use for the Edmodo quiz. So, information processing. I'm not going to go too much into it in detail because we will deal with it more in depth in the next video lecture that I post, and in class we'll start doing a lot with it. But just to give you the general gist so you kind of know where I'm heading, information processing model is basically, well, here's 3 different visuals, okay, 1, 2, 3. They all kind of go through the same process and say the same thing. They're just different visuals. I couldn't pick which one I like better. So I leave that up to you. So you have information, all right, from your environment over here that comes in through sensory memory, right, and then possibly moves on to short-term memory, and then possibly moves on to long-term memory. It's no guarantee that it makes it all the way through. All right. Now, if I break that down, it'll make it a little bit more easier to understand. So sensory memory, just like half the terms you learn in psychology, they're exactly like it's exactly what it sounds like. So it's information that comes in through any one of your senses. All right. So any one of your senses here comes into sensory memory. Whatever sense it is that you're giving your attention to, that's what's going to move on into the next stage. All right, but again, there's a lot of stuff that we take in throughout the day that we're not paying attention to. We're just not really giving it priority. We have selective attention, and whatever we're not focused on, whatever sense we're not focused on, will completely drop out like it was never there and be completely forgotten and won't be a part of the memory. So whatever sense you are paying attention to will move on into the next stage, which is called short-term memory. All right, it's important to know, write this down. Short-term memory has a limited capacity of about 7 items, give or take 2. All right, so on average, you can process and work with in short-term memory 7 items at a time. So you could do anywhere between 5 to 9 items at a time, but generally they say about 7 is the average. So, meet them in the middle there. This follows the whole use it or lose it concept. So if you're not actively working with the information, so short-term memory is also called working memory. If you're not working with whatever information it is that is now in this stage of memory, repetition, okay, rehearse, study, practice. If you're not doing any of that, it's not going to stick with you because it's not going to make it into that final stage of long-term memory. So again, repetition is key for whatever you're focusing on. So for example, whether it's these notes in psychology or any class, anything at all right, you have to continue to go back to the information time and time again in order for you to really be able to remember it. So for example, for those of you that are an avid and you take Cornell notes, you're probably familiar with this concept of repetition and rehearsing and, you know, breaking down those notes. And if you're not, that's fine, because that is something we're going to learn about and hopefully start doing, not just in my class, but see if you can carry that habit into other classes to help you as well. Now, Cornell Notes really does help to get things into long-term storage because, again, repetition is key, and it really works if you do it correctly. All right, so I'll show you guys how to do that in class. Now, let's say it's moved on into long-term memory. You've rehearsed it, and it's stuck. All right, this has, unlike short-term memory, which has like a limit to it, long-term memory is unlimited. It has a limitless capacity. So this is like, if I could attach the image to what the inside of your brain looks like, it's like this. Okay, it's a huge filing system going on in there. So since all the information is literally filed away, you need certain cues to be able to help you retrieve that information from long-term storage. So for example, sometimes you've attached an emotion or an image or a sound, a smell to a specific piece of information that would serve as your cue that's going to then bring that information back out. All right, because you're probably not going to remember something down the line just at the drop of the hat like that. There's something that links to it that's going to bring that memory back. For example, this is where some things with the whole concept of doing the IDs comes in handy, and especially for those that are more visual, that do the pictures and things like that. Because let's say you're trying to quiz yourself on terms, because this class is very vocab heavy, or any class, and you don't remember the definition. Or let's say you're reading the definition, but you don't remember the term that goes along with it. But if you see that picture, all right, I'm just giving you an example. If you see that picture, that can serve as a cue. Then you're like, oh, okay, so your brain will go back into long-term memory, all right, and it'll find that filing cabinet, find where that's stored, and bring it right back out. All right, so there is a method to the madness. So there's more techniques aside from what we do with IDs, but we will discuss those in the following lesson once we're done with this. Now, something that forgoes that entire process of the information processing model is something called flashbulb memory. Right? A flashbulb memory is something that's highly detailed. It's a very vivid snapshot of a moment or a circumstance of something that was very surprising to you, whether good or bad. So the example I have here is of 9/11. All right, you guys may be a little too young to really have a flashbulb memory of this, but I know I do. I know older brothers and sisters of yours, your parents, definitely have a flashbulb memory of this. So basically what that is if you were to ask them about this, all right, or if you, any moment you have a flashbulb memory of, if you were to be asked about it, you'd have a, you know, just so much visual information coming back to you. You'd remember exactly where you were, exactly what time it was. You would get a visual, like this whole visual world of what was around you, feelings, everything would come rushing back to you. And it completely went through, like it completely skipped all of this stuff in the middle and went from, okay, it's information in your environment, and bam, right into long-term memory, because it was so like overwhelming with information and had such an impact on you. However, it's important to note that flashbulb memories are not free from error. All right, you may remember something one way, all right, and that's what it is for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate because of things like our perception. Also, if you think of things like 9/11 or anything in the news, really, they like to report things before they know all the facts, and that seems to happen a lot. But basically, that could have an impact on you. That could be a flashbulb memory. You remember this incident, you remember this news story, but you don't remember the accurate account of it because they were just like rushing to get information out and it wasn't checked if it was like fact or not. But you have a flashbulb memory of what stuck with you first. Okay, so it's not always accurate. Now, the stages of memory. So we learned about the information processing model and how it goes through. Now, that basically follows these 3 stages. So if you think of your brain as a computer, I'm giving you a bunch of different analogies. All right, think of your brain as a computer. All right, when you initially get that information and you have to get the information in, which that's encoding. All right, I put a keyboard. All right, so you're typing in your information, you're getting it into your brain, you're recording it. All right, and then you store it. So you save it onto your flash drive. All right, and then later on, so this would be like, okay, it's coming in, so sensory information, it's coming on into short-term and long-term, all right, would be part of storage because it's being stored, right? And then when you go to retrieve it, all right, so that's, you're getting it out of long-term and you're putting it back into your working memory where you're actually able to work with it and do something, which basically, after this video lecture, when you see me next in class, all right, this hopefully will be in your long-term memory, hopefully, okay, and then I will do an activity, so that's going to have to be retrieved. You have to retrieve the information and get it back into your working memory so we can do something with it. And again, repetition will be key. You'll really start to see a method to the madness here. So again, storage, you store it on your flash drive, and then you retrieve it. All right, so let's say I typed in this PowerPoint, I saved it to my flash drive, and now I'm sharing it with you. I'm able to retrieve my information and I'm telling it to you. However, things can go wrong at any of these stages. All right, again, think of your brain like a computer. What can go wrong at any of these stages on a computer? When you type, all right, you can have a typo, all right, and then it gets saved like that. All right, so you had something go wrong at encoding and then it got saved wrong. Or you have something go wrong at the storage level where you don't save it correctly or you put it in the wrong spot or something like that, which then will make the retrieval process that much harder because now, you tried to save it on a certain media player and now you try to open it up at school and it doesn't load that program. So things can go wrong at any stage in your brain, just as in a computer. All right, let's focus on encoding, so that getting information in. All right, there's a couple different ways that you can encode or record information. All right, the first way we're going to talk about, I'm getting ready to throw a lot of stuff at you, so get these down, is automatic processing. It's when you process information effortlessly. Right, so it's kind of coming to you without any effort. It's automatic, exactly what it sounds like. It does this 3 different ways, through space. All right, so for example, when you're reading a textbook, did you know that you will automatically encode, so you'll automatically in your mind record the place of a picture on the page? I didn't even realize that we do that, but apparently we do. So for example, think of a time when you were taking a test and you closed your eyes and you were trying to remember something back in a book of you because you saw a chart or something on one page that could really help you and you're trying to close your eyes and think back to that chart on that page. You're able to do that because your brain automatically did that. All right, it automatically got that information in. Time, you unintentionally note events that take place during your day. You know when things happen during your day. You know what happened before lunch, you know what happened after lunch. There's no effort for you to remember that. You just kind of remember things chronologically, automatically. And autobiographical information you remember automatically. You effortlessly keep track of things that happen to you. There's no like effort, like I have to remember what happened to me today. You just kind of do that automatically. It gets stored, or well, it goes through the process automatically. Whereas effortful processing, again, exactly what it sounds like. It's like just to get the information in, you have to really put effort into it and really concentrate just to get the information in. Doesn't mean you're going to remember it. It just means that you're able to get it in to start the process. So for example, this picture here is an example of effortful encoding. She's clearly really she's looking down at her textbook. She's trying really hard to just get the information in so that then she can work with it and then hopefully store it. Again, it's no guarantee of storage. It just means it's taking effort to, deal with it. And automatic, there's a picture of a person and a dog walking because walking is an automatic function. Effects of encoding, spacing. We retain information better when we rehearse it over time. Again, I've told you this. I'm sure several other teachers have told you this. Parents have probably told you this. You probably even know that this is what you should do. But at your age, who knows? Basically, going back to that Cornell Notes thing I was talking about earlier, practice is key. Go back and review information several times, all right? Rather than cramming the night before, because you are more likely to remember it, not just for the test, but long term down the line. All right, so for example, if you have forgotten information from Unit 2, but you did really great on the Unit 2 test, but you don't remember a darn thing, okay? It's probably because you crammed and you didn't, so the spacing effect really would have helped you here if you studied like throughout. Then you'll be able to recall it later when we review for a final exam. It'll be that much easier for you, or for the AP exam. So space things out. You're going to remember it a lot better, because come end of the year or even now in January, some of you are really going to struggle with remembering all of this information because it is a lot, whether it's with my class or other classes. But spacing effect, okay? Rehearse over time. It's a thing. Serial positioning effect, when you recall, when your recall is better for the first thing in a list and the last thing in a list. For example, if you were to list all the presidents right now, just even not on paper, like in your mind, just start going through all the presidents. All right, you probably get the first one, maybe 2, 3, 4, depending, if you take AP US history, you might get a little further than others. And then you can remember the last ones, but you completely get lost in the middle. Okay, serial positioning effect. There's another concept that goes along with this that's very similar, but I'll teach it to you another day. There's another thing called next in line effect down here. Okay, next in line effect is how many of you a teacher has said, okay, you are going to read paragraph 5. So as they're reading out loud, you're listening to the person reading paragraph 1, person reading paragraph 2, and paragraph 3. But as soon as it gets to paragraph 4, right, you're not encoding, you're not taking in that information anymore because now you're so focused on your next in line. Okay, so you're either focusing on the fact that, oh my God, I need to like read my section real quick so I do a good job of reading out loud, or you're panicking a little bit. All right, so that's next in line effect, and that's where you can actually miss something in encoding because of that. Some things that help you with encoding and getting information in are visual encoding. So having mental pictures, so imagery. It's a powerful aid to help you. So for example, showing the adverse effects of tanning and smoking in a picture may be a more powerful way of conveying your message than just simply talking about it. Why? Because it's emotionally fueled. So for example, if you're giving a persuasive speech and you want to convince somebody of your stance, all right, it's going to be a lot easier if you have some type of visual image attached that elicits a strong emotion from somebody, okay, to be able to encode that information and get it in. Again, it's no guarantee that it's going to stick. It's only encoding. It only got the information in. What you do with it from there, it will get it to stick. All right. Then you have active versus passive processing. Active is where you are visualizing what you're trying to remember. You are actually trying to put it into memory. So go back to that one picture from this PowerPoint of the girl looking down at her notes. She is really trying. All right, that's active processing. So this can go into studying. Passive processing, and I'm sure we're all guilty of it at some point, you're just trying to memorize. You're just trying to memorize. You only need to know it for right now. You're going to forget it 5 minutes after the test because there was no real processing that happened. There's no real learning. If you just memorize something to memorize it, rote memorization, it's going to go out of your brain as soon as you're done with it. And again, this can go back to some of our studying habits. So think about, which one are you? Do you follow active processing or passive processing? Just so you know, active processing is more effective. So if we have some bad habits of being passive, try to switch them over into active. We'll talk about this stuff in class, and again, in different strategies to get you to do this that'll hopefully help you out. All right. We learned about, in Unit 3, a ton of different brain structures and what they do. Hopefully you remember them. If not, go back and look. But make sure you get this slide down. So, I mean, you should be copying things throughout the lecture, but definitely right now. So brain structures and how they are actually involved in memory. So this isn't just necessarily a repeat of what these brain structures do. This is me telling you how that brain structure connects to memory and to this unit specifically. So your prefrontal cortex, so that's like the whole front, that's the frontal lobe. Okay. With memory, it deals with memory involving sequence of events, but not the actual event itself. So you're not remembering an event from here, you're just remembering the order of things that happened during that event, how it happened. Your amygdala encodes emotional aspects of the memory. All right, so this is key. If you can attach emotion to something, make something have an emotional connection for you, you are more likely to remember it. This is, the method of the madness, where I bring in and tell you like personal stories, and we try to make all these personal connections because I'm trying to add emotion to what you're learning about, because it's more likely to stick with you if you've added that there for yourself. So take this beyond psychology and do this for other classes and other things in your life. If you add emotion, all right, the amygdala, look at that, it's attached to the hippocampus, all right, it's going to help you in storing and retrieving information a lot quicker. All right, your temporal lobe doesn't just deal with hearing. All right, it helps encode and transfer explicit memories into long-term memory as well. This might be because you hear things, all right? Some people that are more auditory learners, right, this really helps them the most. Your hippocampus, again, this long piece here that's attached to the amygdala, also encodes and transfers new explicit memories into long-term memory. However, it doesn't say here, but you should probably add, so write down what I'm saying, the hippocampus also deals with retrieving memory. Key with retrieving memory as well as encoding. And finally, your cerebellum at the back of your head, you should know that deals with balance. So link balance into memory, and it's kind of like muscle memory things, so memories involving movement. You heard me mention explicit memories. You may not know have known what those are, but now you're going to. You have implicit and explicit. Implicit are unintentional things that are learned unintentionally, whereas explicit memories are things that are intentionally learned. So implicit memories are like, the how to do things. So procedural memory, you go through the motions. Unconscious memories, including perception, motor skills, sensations, classical conditioning, so things that go along with reflexes, fear responses, eye blinking, things that kind of happen automatically. You know how to do them. You just never really learned in depth. It's generalizations of how. Whereas explicit memories are facts and experiences, and they're very specific. Some types of explicit memory are declarative memories, episodic, and semantic memories. We're going to talk about those three more in depth in class. Episodic memory basically allows you to remember personal events or experiences throughout your life, giving you the sense of your own individuality. So to remember episodic memory, I like to think of your life as a soap opera on the next episode, and you're going to remember different personal events. Semantic memory is basically, that's your facts and general autobiographical information. Right? It's just straight facts. But again, episodic memory is more specific to a certain thing, whereas implicit memory is more general how to do things that you know unconsciously. All right, so again, Explicit memory, temporal lobe, and the hippocampus are here. You can recall facts, that's your semantic memory, and events, your episodic memory. Whereas implicit memories are things like procedural memory, classical conditioning, emotional responses, stuff like that, muscle movements. So that wraps this up. It's the longest video you've had, but you've only had to watch one. So to review, all right, before you take your Edmodo quiz, use the notes that you took from this lecture video and answer the following questions, right, before you move on to Edmodo. All right, so you are starting that whole process of rehearsing. All right, repetition is key in order for you to hold on to this stuff, make it a lot easier for you when you get to Edmodo. Hopefully this helps you out. So you need to define memory. Okay, so go back to your notes. It's in the beginning. Distinguish between explicit and implicit memories. Okay, what's the difference? What types of information do you automatically process? How does sensory memory work? What is the capacity of our short-term and working memory? What is the capacity and location of our long-term memory? What are the roles of our frontal lobe and hippocampus in memory processing? What role does the cerebellum play in memory? And how do external cues, internal emotions, and the order of appearance influence your memory? All right, so make sure you go back through, answer each of those questions, make sure you have notes on those before you move on to the Edmodo quiz that I will post in a little bit. Okay? All right, I'll see you in class.